Vulnerability challenge. Number 1, remove this word from your vocabulary. That word is love. Hi, I'm Kirby. I'm a specialist in trauma and attachment theory. I shoot these videos every day to just help people figure stuff out. Took me long enough. Okay, so today we're talking about a challenge that I often give to my in-person students and basically anyone who is willing to try. And this challenge, it's a practice that we take on. It's a practice that we embrace. And this practice is to challenge ourselves to be more vulnerable. And the theory behind this challenge is that vulnerability and clear, deep, intimate communication is one of the best hallmarks of a healthy relationship. It's one of the best ways to build connection with another human being. How can I be connected with you if I don't know what's going on inside? How can I be connected with you if I am projecting my internal thoughts, beliefs, everything else onto you? And at that point in time, it's like I'm not even in relationship with you. I'm in relationship with some construct of you, which is generally how it works. But this challenge is specifically to help us get past that. It's to help us find a different way to communicate. Okay, so what are we talking about here? There's this word that people use all the time. That word is love. I love you. I love this. She loves him. He loves her. I love pizza. I love my romantic partner. I love my mom and dad. I love my pet. Right? I had a friend once who was from India, and she talked about how in the base language, which is Urdu, at least that's my understanding of it, there was something like 35 different words that covered the vast array of loves, different types of connection, brother to brother, this, brotherly love, the unconditional love of a parent for a child, the romantic love that is enduring through the years, or a passionate, sexual, erotic kind of charge. Many different words to cover many different ways of having intense feelings for another human being. But in English, we only get one. We get love, right? And we can talk about like, we can talk about like, we can talk about familial love, brotherly love. Some people will use old Greek words like eros or philos, which I guess I heard that mostly when I was hanging in Christian circles, because those were some of the words that were used in the old Ionic Greek. I think it's called Ionic Greek, that was used for the New Testament. But let's just say for now, you're a normal human being that's speaking English to normal human friends, and you're not quite ready to jump into finding out 35 different words in Urdu or 10 different words in Greek. And so that brings us to the challenge. And the challenge is simply this: remove love from your vocabulary. Don't remove the emotion. Don't cut off the emotion. No, the opposite is the case. We want to get more in touch with the emotion. We want to have it living inside us, feeling it, touching it, swimming in it. But the only bit is I'm putting a little restriction on this LOVE word and saying, that's not the word I'm going to let come out of my mouth. And it forces me to find a different way to say it. So why is this? What am I talking about? Is that there have been these times where you're in this group full of people, teaching some class, and you can get them up in a big circle and be like, I would like you to describe or define the word love. And what happens is that the first person feels all this pressure. Why? a pressure to perform. Because now they're in this circle, and the words that are about to come out of their mouth need to be important. They need to be meaningful. They need to be spiritual or profound, right? We're just asking you to define a word, but no. Like, we can tell at the very beginning of the exercise that something is amiss here. I say, define dog, and they will be like, okay. And then they will just define dog or chair or running. But if you say love, because it has all this societal weight behind it, it's a very, very charged word, that person is immediately feeling the pressure of trying to come up with a good definition. So they'll say blah, 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 blah. And then the next person will be like blah, 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 blah. And then you go around the circle and you realize that, if you've got 20 people in the circle, you're probably going to get 20 different definitions. Maybe 10, right? There might be a couple of people that double up. So there's something weird there about the emotional charge of that word that's already strange. But let's take it out of that context, right? Where they're not actually trying to compete with each other for who can come up with the most spiritual, profound way of defining the damn word. Like, let's get to the point where it's just like, let's go in and eavesdrop a little bit on, like, here's these two lovebirds that are, on a date together. And then one of them asks the other person, what does love mean for you? And they'll be like, again, blah, 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 right? Some long-winded definition. Who knows what it might be? Because that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that, like, there's no consistency. So I've done the group work, and I've also done the thing where I, like, go to one person at a time, and we're in some long-winded conversation. We're talking about the meaning of life and relationships, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, what does love mean to you? And somebody gives me an answer. And then it's like, okay, I come over here and I do it with a different person. And then you do that 100 times, you get 100 different definitions. And it's not even like those definitions are close. It's like, sometimes it has to do with selflessness. Sometimes it has to do with an emotional intensity. Sometimes it has to do with like integrity of beliefs, like sticking with something that they really care about. And then you've got this like mutual thing. Then you got these other people that are like, no, love is a verb. Love is a choice that you make. It's a set of actions or behaviors that you engage in, where you put their needs in front of your own. I mean, there's a lot of different definitions, right? Okay, so now we've got this word that might have hundreds or thousands of different definitions. And then I'm in relationship with the partner. And I'm like, hey, partner, oh, I love you. What the F do I even mean? Right? I just had a feeling inside me that kind of rose up, landed in my conscious mind. My conscious mind says, what's the description of this feeling? It's like, oh, the description of this feeling is love. Okay, now I'm going to vomit that out of my mouth, and it floats through the air, hits their eardrums, goes into their brain, and they hear this word. And then that word in their end gets mapped to their internal idea about what love means, which we just established is very likely to be different. I mean, what's positive, we both know, it's like, oh, my boyfriend or girlfriend said something positive, right? They uttered this word, and when that word hit my brain, I know that they mean good things for me, or they like me, or they're enjoying our time together, or whatever. But it's just like, beyond that, like, what does it actually mean? Does this mean we have a commitment? Does this mean there's expectations? Does this mean that we're going to spend our lives together? Does this mean that I'm not going to have sex with anybody else? Like, what does it mean? Or is it simply you're expressing a word to describe your emotional state? Okay, cool, except what if I'm one of those people that believes that love is a verb? Then I'm like, well, what verb are you talking about right now? What is the action that you're going to do or have done that's in alignment with... See, it's just like, it's two ships passing in the night consistently. Like, this isn't like a little thing. This is a big thing. This is very common. You've got two ships passing in the night because you got one person saying, oh, I love you, and the other person says, oh, I love you too. And it's like, great. Now you've got this positive little bounce back of emotions that goes back and forth. But that's like beyond that, we really don't have any idea what's going on inside the other person's brain or mind or heart or nervous system or whatever. So, thus, we have the challenge. The challenge is wipe that word from your vocabulary. Try it. Try it for 60 days. 2 months, you abstain from using the word love. Now, this is easy if you don't have anybody in your life that you're loving right now, so don't do that. That's a cop-out. No, adopt this challenge. You know, if you're in a partnership, it's kind of cool for you to both do it because it's very, very interesting. Adopt this challenge and to say, I'm going to eliminate love. I'm just going to abstain from using that word for 2 months. And so every time it arises, the feeling, the sensation, the thoughts about partner, you're like, I can't use that word, so what am I going to say? And it forces you to be creative, which is a really good thing for the human brain. Like autopilot, same old, that is not good. That's monotony. It is monotonous, incredibly monotonous to just do the same thing over and over and over again. So it challenges the brain to be creative, which is really, really good for the human brain. Falling into monotony, same thing, autopilot, is generally not associated with healthiness. So removing love from the vocabulary challenges us to be creative, and it challenges us to go deeper. Instead of saying, hey, Sally, I love you, hey, John, I love you, I have to get creative and find a different way to express it. That encourages me to go deeper into it, to say, when I'm spending time with you, I get this warm, lovely, excited, comfortable feeling inside. I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel supported. Like these are wonderful, wonderful feelings that happen inside me when we spend time together. And I want to express that I'm super thankful for that. And I really enjoy it so much that I'm just sitting here hoping that we get to do this for a long, long time together. You see that? Which one's better? This like long-winded, crazy, vulnerable share, or simply being like, oh, I love you so much? You can have whatever opinion you want, but when we look at traits of a healthy relationship, the vulnerable share is going to be much more likely to show up in a healthy relationship, encourage the depth of a healthy relationship. But more than that, because, my main purpose in everything is trying to prevent attachment trauma in the next generation of children, learning how to express it that way forces me to get connected with myself. It encourages me to be more vulnerable. It encourages me to have a greater degree of emotional expression. And if I have real living children around me, they're going to passively absorb that skill from me as I demonstrate it. And I was once teaching this topic in a live class here, and there was this woman in the audience, and she was like, at the beginning stages, she's just like, you're telling me that I should not tell my 3-year-old son that I love him? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you anything, but just this is kind of the theory. This is the challenge. You can choose the challenge if you want to. So we discuss things for a long time, talk about many aspects of attachment theory and the other stuff I cover in these videos. And then towards the end of the class, she's like, oh, I get it now. She said, if I'm sitting there with my son, and instead of just saying, hey, I love you, I tell him, when I sit here and I witness the way that you play with your Legos and the degree of creativity and curiosity and joy in this play and building, like I have the best feelings inside, and I just enjoy it, and I enjoy you, and I enjoy being in this space. And I'm like, That's a lot of words. And some of those words may not be understood by a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. But the vulnerability that you are expressing, the amount of emotional connection and fluid expression of that emotional connection, I'm feeling these emotions inside, I'm allowing them to rise up and I'm allowing them to come out in verbal form, that is 100% understood by the child. That is literally the language of the subconscious, which is probably the dominant mind in young children. So it's like we say the word, oh, I love you so much. That's just a word. Those are just sound waves floating through the air, right? Especially to a young child. A young child doesn't have language yet. They don't know what the F is going on. You could say like strawberry biscuit. And if you say strawberry biscuit while bouncing around, all that kind of stuff, they're going to be like, oh, strawberry biscuit is the description for this giddy, fun feeling that I have inside me. And they're going to go through their whole life being like, hey, partner, I strawberry biscuit you, right? There's no internal baked in association with the word love and the experience that we are using love to describe. And so what this challenge does is it challenges us to give up a word that's kind of devoid of meaning. It's devoid of meaning because I have no way of knowing or understanding that the meaning that I have in my head will ever reach another person. I could literally walk up to 10,000 people and say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, right? And of those 10,000 people, a small handful, 1, 5, 10, whatever, will actually have the same idea in their brain that I have in mine. So why am I even using the word? It's like, oh, we use the word because people feel good when they hear it. It's like, oh, well, if people feel good when they hear that word, wouldn't they even feel better if I'm telling them how much joy, happiness, warmth, delight, giddy, excited, happy, future-seeking that I feel when I'm in their presence? For some people, this feels really weird. It's like it's too many words. It's why do we need to do that? Why can't I just use the word like we have this word for a reason? La 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 la. If someone's using that argument, chances are they're on the avoidant end of the spectrum from an attachment theory point of view. Not demonizing them. It's just that is kind of an indicator that that person's uncomfortable with vulnerable sharing. And so it's even more important that they try this challenge. I'm thinking of a few people in particular that I've worked with, friends and students over the years, that are definitely manifest on the more avoidant end of the spectrum, and they do not like vulnerable sharing. That's one of the reasons why this challenge came about. Because it's like, challenge yourself to up your game. Challenge yourself to express the emotions in a way that bypasses the bullshit words that are essentially meaningless. Be creative. Be vulnerable. Sit in that place where you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen. And sharing these emotions sure feels uncomfortable. That's exactly where you want to be. That is exactly the place that healthy relationships blossom. I hope you take the challenge. I hope you comment on the progress of this challenge, what you've learned, different creative ways you've found to express it. I hope you put those in the comments below. How cool would that be to have a whole community of people sharing their progress with this challenge and the different crazy things that are going to happen? I hope this challenge falls upon the ears of the people that are willing to embrace it. And I wish you the best. I totally believe in you. Peace.